6 months after the Supreme Court's unanimous decision in Barnes v. Felix, the Fifth Circuit has returned to its original position. The justices directed the lower courts to stop using the moment of threat shortcut and instead apply the Fourth Amendment by considering the totality of the circumstances. However, on remand, the lower court reiterated this standard but still upheld the shooting of Ashtian Barnes following a toll stop on the Sam Houston Tollway. This situation should raise concerns for all Americans. Rights are only as secure as the judges who uphold them. If a unanimous Supreme Court ruling can be followed in form but disregarded in substance, the precedents affecting traffic stops, home searches, and Second Amendment cases become uncertain. This analysis will explain how this occurred and its implications. At its core, this case addresses a fundamental question: under what circumstances can the government use lethal force during a minor traffic stop and be shielded by the courts in Barnes v. Felix? This issue lies at the intersection of the Fourth Amendment and real-world police practices. This case does not involve a search warrant raid or a major drug bust. It began with alleged unpaid tolls on the Sam Houston Tollway in Houston. Toll cameras identified a Toyota Corolla as owing money. Deputy Roberto Felix Jr., assigned to toll enforcement, spotted the car, pulled it over on the left shoulder, and approached the vehicle. The critical events in this case unfolded in approximately 90 seconds. When Felix reached the driver's window, he reported smelling marijuana. Investigators later found no drugs but did discover a loaded handgun under the driver's seat. Ashtian Barnes did not have his physical driver's license, and the car was rented in his girlfriend's name. From the deputy's perspective, the stop escalated due to the lack of a license, the rental status, and the suspected marijuana. Barnes, meanwhile, was confined on the left shoulder with heavy traffic passing nearby. Felix then ordered Barnes to exit the vehicle. Barnes opened the driver's door as if to comply, but then shifted back inside, started the car, and attempted to drive away. At that moment, Felix chose to jump onto the door sill of the moving vehicle and held on, rather than stepping back or moving to a safer position to report a fleeing driver. This decision is central to the lawsuit. Within seconds, while clinging to the side of the vehicle, Felix fired 2 rounds into the cabin, striking Barnes both times. The car came to a stop, and the traffic stop over unpaid tolls became a fatal shooting. Local officials did not file criminal charges against Felix. Instead, the subsequent legal proceedings stemmed from a civil rights lawsuit filed by Barnes's mother against Felix in Harris County, alleging unconstitutional excessive force. The civil rights suit was filed under a federal law permitting individuals to sue government officials for constitutional violations. In this case, the right at issue is the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable seizures. A seizure is not limited to physical restraint. When the government ends a person's freedom of movement through the use of deadly force, it constitutes the most extreme form of seizure. At trial, the federal district court focused solely on the final moment when Felix was on the moving car. Applying the Fifth Circuit's moment of threat rule, the judge determined that earlier decisions and the minor nature of the toll violation were not relevant. The central question was whether Felix reasonably believed he faced serious harm at the moment he fired. With this narrow focus, the court found the shooting legally justified, as a deputy hanging from a moving car on a busy toll road presents an inherently dangerous situation. The district court granted summary judgment for Deputy Felix in Harris County, dismissing the mother's case before it could reach a jury. Effectively, the judge ruled that even when viewing the facts most favorably to the family, the officer prevails. The case proceeded to the Fifth Circuit, the federal appeals court for Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The panel adopted the same approach, applying the moment of threat rule, which considers only whether the officer was in danger at the moment he fired. The events leading up to the incident and the officer's tactical decisions were disregarded. This approach effectively incentivizes officers to take increasingly risky positions, as courts focusing only on the final moments make it easier to justify claims of perceived danger. The Fifth Circuit affirmed the judgment, which appeared to conclude the case for the Barnes family at that stage. The Supreme Court of the United States then intervened, agreeing to hear Barnes v. Felix, which indicated significant concerns with the lower court's approach. The court issued a unanimous ruling, with all 9 justices across the ideological spectrum rejecting the Fifth Circuit's moment of threat doctrine. The court clarified that this is not how the Fourth Amendment operates. In excessive force cases, judges must consider the totality of the circumstances. This means evaluating the severity of the underlying offense, whether the suspect posed an immediate threat, whether there was resistance or flight, and how the officer responded throughout the encounter. The Supreme Court instructed lower courts not to focus solely on the brief period when Felix was on the car. Instead, they must consider the entire context, including the unpaid tolls, the location on a busy highway, the officer's decision to jump onto the moving vehicle, and all other relevant factors. This reflects the totality of the circumstances framework that the court has emphasized in excessive force cases. The justices also emphasized that they did not determine whether Felix violated the Fourth Amendment or acted reasonably. Instead, they vacated the Fifth Circuit's decision and remanded the case, instructing the lower court to apply the correct standard before concluding. On paper, this represented a significant victory for the Barnes family and for those seeking a thorough judicial review of police shootings. Within the unanimous ruling, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, joined by several conservative justices, issued a concurring opinion. He agreed that lower courts must apply the totality of the circumstances test, but also emphasized the dangers officers face during traffic stops, particularly when a suspect attempts to flee in a vehicle. Justice Kavanaugh argued that, given the risks a fleeing vehicle poses to officers and bystanders, courts should be cautious in second-guessing split-second decisions in such situations. While his concurrence does not alter the law, it signals how some justices may interpret the totality analysis in cases involving vehicle flight. The case then returned to the Fifth Circuit, raising concerns for many observers. Despite the Supreme Court's directive to abandon the moment of threat shortcut and consider the entire context, the panel did not schedule new briefings or oral arguments to address the encounter under the totality standard. Instead, the panel proceeded quickly, without scheduling another hearing or requesting comprehensive new briefs under the corrected standard. After requesting status updates, they issued a new written decision that recited the totality of the circumstances framework, but again ruled in favor of Deputy Felix. On reconsideration, the Fifth Circuit expanded its discussion of the facts, addressing the left shoulder location, the potential for a high-speed chase, the later discovery of a loaded gun, and Barnes's criminal history. Relying heavily on Justice Kavanaugh's themes regarding vehicle flight, the court concluded that Felix's use of deadly force was either reasonable or not clearly established as unconstitutional. The phrase "not clearly established" language matters because it ties into another doctrine you hear a lot. In these cases, qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is a judicial rule stating that even if an officer violates the Constitution, they cannot be held personally liable unless a prior case with similar facts has already established that such conduct is unconstitutional. This doctrine often makes it difficult to enforce rights in practice. In summary, the Fifth Circuit stated it was applying the totality test as directed by the Supreme Court, but still ruled in favor of Felix, resulting in a loss for the Barnes family. The case was again dismissed at the summary judgment stage, without a jury hearing evidence or assessing credibility. At this stage, the family's remaining options are to request an en banc review by the full Fifth Circuit or to petition the Supreme Court, arguing that the lower court has disregarded a unanimous ruling. Civil liberties and defense organizations are monitoring the case closely, as it raises concerns about the effectiveness of Supreme Court precedent if lower courts can claim compliance while reaching the same outcomes for the same reasons. For Americans, particularly those concerned with the Bill of Rights, the broader lesson is sobering. The Fourth Amendment's protections depend not only on landmark decisions, but also on how courts apply those rulings in complex, real-world situations. If judges interpret totality of the circumstances to justify deadly force in most vehicle flight cases, legal protections during traffic stops and similar encounters are significantly weakened. The same lower courts that decide Fourth Amendment cases often also handle Second Amendment challenges. A judicial culture that narrows rights in practice while professing to respect them in theory raises concerns for anyone who values constitutional protections. This is why the outcome in Barnes v. Felix is significant, regardless of personal experience with toll enforcement. As this case progresses through the courts, it tests whether the Fourth and Second Amendments retain their intended meanings in practice, remain informed, act peacefully, and stay engaged with the facts. It is important not to overlook the significance of this legal challenge.